This is our image sizing and resolution demo in Photoshop, and the first technical demo we'll be covering in digital imaging. Now, this class is set up to where, given that you are all coming in with different levels of experience in Adobe Photoshop, we're going to be starting from ground zero on making sure you're all working with best practices in image compositing and layering in Photoshop. And so this first demo is going to cover the basics in Photoshop: image sizing, canvas size, and then managing resolution, specifically in regards to your first major project, the 1 in 20 project. So I have Adobe Photoshop open already on my screen, so you can see some of my recent projects pulled up down here, which is kind of fun. But what you're going to need for this demo specifically are three things, and I've included a link to this in Canvas, so you can access the 1 in 20 project PSD layouts and demo files. You'll need the demo image of my brother's dog, Pip. You're going to need the demo image of balloons, and then you're also going to need to choose either the 1 in 20 grid, horizontal or vertical, depending on what size you'd like to work with in our demo together. So make sure that you have those, that you get them downloaded, and you have them in a folder, hopefully saved on an external hard drive that you can access. So I've already downloaded those, and what I'll need to do is go into Open, and my hope is here that you guys can watch this demo, but also work alongside me with your notebook, jotting down keyboard shortcuts that we're going to be talking about today, and taking a few notes while also working with the exact same demo images that I have for you, that I'm going to be showing you today. So if you're just watching the demo and not working with the images yourself, it could be very boring. So fair warning. Highly recommend pulling this up on YouTube, on your phone, or another screen, and then working on your laptop so that you can walk through the steps with me. So I'm going to open the 1 in 20 grid vertical 300 DPI PSD. And so I can go ahead and do that through the open window. Another way that's pretty convenient as far as opening images in Photoshop is if you open up your Finder window, and if I have all of these saved in a folder, what I can do is grab both of these demo images I'm going to be working with, and I can actually drag them into the Photoshop icon that's down on the lower part of my iMac screen. So that's another way that you can do this, and you can also right click on them and they will open for you as well. So to show that, I will right click and I can hit open with, and it should give me the option of Photoshop 2020, the latest version here, and they should pop up as individual tabs up on the top of my Photoshop screen. So I can see all of these different images at once. Something to mention with Photoshop, given that there's quite a few algorithms going on in the background for image processing and sizing, especially when you're working in really complex, highly layered images. I recommend having a maximum of 5 of these tabs open at any given time. Any more than that, and it can get a little bit tricky to navigate where one file is from another. And Photoshop will assuredly run a lot slower. So make sure that you're not opening a whole bunch of tabs in Photoshop like what I have a very bad habit of doing in Google Chrome, for example. You want to keep it pretty clean up at the top. So I'm going to bounce over to the 1 in 20 grid and kind of walk you guys through how I have this set up. When you open this Photoshop document, you'll see that I've already added all of these gridded lines, ruler lines, which offer a really great space for your image to actually snap into place. Now, if I go into the View tab in Photoshop up at the top. I click View, I get a drop-down menu, and there is an option for Show, Grid, and Guides. Now, as you're getting closer to completing this project, I encourage you to turn off the guides so that you can see if you've left any white space in between where the images are touching. But I want you to know you can turn this off and on by going into View, Show, and Guides. And what's great is you can always pull in your own guides as well if you are working on an image where you want a bit more structure or you want things to kind of snap into place. The other thing that I want to show you guys that's unique to this document is I have the check next to snap, which means that when I do drop in an image, that image is more likely to snap in closer to where my guides are located, all those blue lines going throughout my piece. So make sure that you keep that checked so that your workflow goes a bit faster and things are a little bit easier for you. The last thing under View that's important to note are rulers. So if I do turn on my rulers here, you'll see them pop up at the top and the bottom. It makes it really easy for me to drag another guide onto my canvas at any given time. I can do that and that appears. I can pull it up, and I can also eliminate it if I would like. So that's how I made this. And if you ever want to make more of a gridded look to a future piece, it's very good to know where your rulers are located in Photoshop. So the very basic principles in working in Photoshop are understanding the difference between your image size and your canvas size. And specifically with this, you can't really tell scale. I can hold down my command button on a Mac or control if you're working on a PC. I'm going to hold down that button and hit the minus sign, and I can use that keyboard shortcut to zoom out into infinity. I can hit the plus sign while I'm holding down command on a Mac or control on a PC, and I can zoom in. But that doesn't really give me a lot of information about how big this workspace actually is if I were to create a physical print of this document. So if I want to find that information out, I'm going to go up to the top where it says Image, and I'll get a drop-down window under Image up at the top bar. I know you can't see that, but you should be able to see that drop-down menu under Image. And the first one I want to show you is Canvas Size. Canvas size is the physical space that your Photoshop document is taking up. Now, I have predetermined that the canvas size for what you're going to be working with for the 1 in 20 project is 20 by 25 inches or 25 by 20 inches. And that's quite large. And still maintaining, how much image quality we're going to be putting into this. So understand that you're working in a pretty large space, which is why it's going to be very important that you're incorporating images that have a high resolution. So I'm going to hit OK on that. Then I'm going to go up to Image, and instead of hitting Canvas Size, this time I'm going to go to Image Size, and I get another dialog box that pops up, and this one is actually measured in pixels. So it's telling me that my full image size is 6,000 pixels by 7,500 pixels, quite large, and my resolution, or pixels per inch, is 300. And we can also talk about this number as 300 DPI, which stands for dots per inch. And pixel is great. It's an acronym that actually stands for picture element, which most people, I think, don't actually realize, which is very cool. So this is actually telling me how much resolution I have to experiment with in this image. Now, my resolution, if I change that to anything else, that will dictate the width and height, presumably, and if I change my width and height, that's going to affect my resolution. But we're going to deal with that when we actually start looking at our images. But really important to note, our resolution here is 300. So moving on, I am going to go to the demo image of Pip that I have pulled up, my brother's Chihuahua rescue dog mix here. And this is a digital photograph taken on a DSLR camera. Hypothetically, I should have quite a few pixels to work with, especially if I want to use this picture of Pip in my 1 in 20 grid for whatever reason. Now, if my grid size is 20 by 25, that means that each of those squares that I'm looking at in my grid are 5 inches by 5 inches, which is pretty big, especially at 300 DPI. Now, I want to show you the canvas size and the image size looking at this picture of Pip so you guys can kind of see the difference that any adjustment on those makes when we're actually working with an image file. This one is an image file as well, but it doesn't have very much information since it's a blank canvas. And this one should give a little bit better picture for what I'm talking about. So if I go to image canvas size on this picture, I get my dialog box again. And I'm again just working in inches. I can put that into pixels or millimeters, points, picas, columns. But let's say, for example, I change the canvas size. I can make this canvas infinitely expansive in one direction or another. Let's say I changed my width to 23 inches. I can make that width come specifically out to the right by anchoring from the left on this grid. So it shows you, the arrows show you where that additional amount of canvas is going to pop into my image digitally. So I'll hit OK. And I'll hit Command minus, and you can see I've added additional width to that image. And that this is really important because ultimately you can change the space of the image that you're working with in canvas size by adding additional information, additional space to work within through canvas size. And image size does something very different. I'm going to hit Command Z on my Mac here, Control Z on a PC in order to undo this. And I want to show you the image size dialog box in regards to this picture. So, interestingly, my resolution is 200 DPI, which is different than my grid where I'm going to be superimposing this image. So if I do want to composite part of this picture into my 1 in 20 grid and make sure that that lines up as far as inches and pixels, I need to make those resolutions uniform. So I'm going to have to change my resolution and see what that does to my width and height, because I'm going to be cramming in, instead of 240 pixels per inch, I'm going to be putting 300 pixels per inch into that frame. You might be asking, okay, why is the resolution 240 pixels per inch, and why is the number 300 DPI so significant, given that I've included it as a project parameter for all of your major projects in the class? Well, 300 DPI is the resolution of a high-end photographic inkjet printer. So in the future, when you're printing your portfolio, when you're printing this out to share with someone, knowing that every single thing you've made in this class is set to 300 DPI, you know that you can print this on a high-resolution printer and maintain every aspect of super tight, sharp detail in that frame. Why is my resolution 240 on this digital photograph? Well, it just so happens that many digital cameras, as a default, are set to take pictures at 240 pixels per inch. And then in that compression process, going from RAW to JPEG, you can navigate if you want that resolution to be reset to 300. So this is the default of my DSLR camera here. Okay, let's go ahead and change the resolution here to 300 and see what happens. So you'll notice both of these numbers just expanded. My width and my height just got larger, and it's possible that in that process I've lost some information because I've literally just said, okay, make more pixels happen. when technically I should be looking for that width and height to get a bit smaller. So if I uncheck resolution, or if I uncheck resample and I change it back to 240 and I recheck resample and change this to pixels, now I'm back to my original width and height here, and I'm going to go ahead and change that resolution to 300, and then I would hit OK. Now, the first thing I want to do before I make that adjustment is I actually need to get this into a square, and I know now that those squares need to be 5 inches by 5 inches. So I'm going to grab my crop tool from my side toolbar. I can also hit the keyboard shortcut C, and all of a sudden I have a crop window where I can start experimenting. Up here in this bar up at the top, you're going to get some detailed ways that you can adjust your crop window. So for us, for the 1 in 20 project, I know that I need my crop window to be 1 by 1 or a square. So I can modify that over here. I can even pull it in and sort of tighten it up around pip. What's great about these ratios is you can change it to 1920 by 1080 if you're looking to drop a still into a high definition video file. And you can crop as 4 by 5 or 8 by 10 if you want a standard printed photo size. But I am going to go 1 by 1 or square, and then I'm going to hit enter. All right, so I've modified this image. This is a destructive edit, but I know that this is the one that I want to move forward with. So I don't want to lose my original file. This is going to be really important for you guys as you're working with different scans or photos that you've sourced that you're incorporating into the 1 in 20 project. So as soon as I make that crop, I'm going to go ahead and save this as file, save as demo image pip underscore crop in all caps. So I know that I have a separate version of this from the original file. I now have my working file that I'm going to be using for my composite. Okay, so I have cropped it into a square, ready to go to the next step, which is my image size. If I go to image size, I need this to be 5 inches by 5 inches at 300 pixels per inch because that's the resolution of my grid. So if I change pixels to inches, I can hit 5 inches by 5 inches, and it's okay if it's a slightly strange decimal number. This should not affect you too much. 5.003, this is just Photoshop saying, okay, there's 1 pixel that's slightly outside, so don't freak out about that. And then I want to change my resolution to 300. So now I have 5 inches at resolution 300, and I'm going to hit OK. And it should get slightly smaller, yeah, because I scaled it down from, it was about 6 inches anyways. Which means, after I've done that, I can grab my rectangular marquee tool over here on my left toolbar, or I can hit the keyboard shortcut M, which is very helpful for this, and drag a box around that cropped square. Hit Command Copy or Control Copy if you're working on a PC. Pop over to my vertical grid, hit Command V to paste. I can grab my move arrow with the keyboard shortcut V as soon as I have my spinning rainbow of death. I'm very dramatic about this because I hate that thing on the Mac. I can hit V, which gives me my move tool. I want to make sure I'm on layer 1, which is pip. We're going to rename that in just a second. And what's great is that it should snap right into place inside of that grid. Awesome. Now, if I double click that layer, I'm going to change it to pip. I really encourage you guys to get into the habit right now on this first project of making sure each and every one of your layers is named and labeled in a way that allows you to figure out what it is and where it is. A huge pitfall when you start trying to work really quickly through Photoshop is forgetting to do this step, but your future self, when you reopen this project or make a revision to this project, will thank you for making sure that those file names or that those layer names are all organized and succinct with what kind of content is there. So that's how you get that image to be the correct size. Now, had I not done that and I just had cropped that image of pip, but I hadn't resized it, if I hit Command Z, here we go, you'll notice Command C to copy, and then Command V. It is ever so slightly too large for the window. So it's sort of hanging out on the lower side and the left side here, and it's not going to snap perfectly into place where I need it. So if you make a mistake or decide that you want to eliminate one of your layers entirely, you can simply drag it into the trash can at the bottom. Okay, so this image obviously has really high resolution, a lot of pixels to work with. I recommend that you guys use digital photographs. You can use photos from your smartphone or even the notes function in iPhones has a scan function that you can use to make scans of photographs or documents or journal pages that you might want to include in this project or future projects. You can also access the scanner on the second floor of Wilson to scan any images you want to incorporate. Make sure you are scanning in the settings section at 1200 resolution. But if you're planning on using scanned imagery, let me know in advance so I can make sure that you get access and I can make sure that you understand how to use the scanner. I have a whole other demo for that. Okay. That's the importance of high resolution images. What happens if you pick an image from the internet or Google and you go ahead and download it, and you're not sure how big it is or if it's even possible to be used for this particular assignment, which calls for 0 pixelation and only high resolution images? Well, I will show you a bad example of an image to try to use. So I pulled this image of some really colorful balloons from Google. And if I sort of diagnose what's going on with this image by going into image size, we can see it has a resolution of 96 pixels per inch, even though the width and height are 6.458 by 3.625 inches. The resolution is what is going to cause a problem here. If I uncheck resample, if I do change that resolution to 300, my width and my height go to only 2.067 inches by 1.16 inches, which is totally not enough space to work with for this project. So this image I would not be able to use. And you can see this in many ways with your own eyes. If you hit Command plus and start zooming in, you can see it sort of break down into pixels quite quickly. Here I can see every individual color tone that's being incorporated into this picture. It was sort of broken in many ways before we even started to work with it. You can see all of the artifacting happening between contrast areas of various colors here. It is pretty rough. Whereas even in this cropped version of pip, if I hit Command plus multiple times, it takes until about 1200% or 1600% when we start to see those little pixel units pop up. So something to be really mindful of. So make sure that you've saved this as a crop version, so you still have your original images that you're working with for the 1 in 20 project. And as you start to piece things in to your Photoshop document here, we need to make sure that we save this and save frequently so that you know where to find your work and you can constantly open it. I'm going to go into File, Save As. And in this demo folder that I have, I'm going to change that name to last name, first name, 1 in 20 project.psd. Save it as a Photoshop. This is my working file that I can always come back to. And once that's saved, I'll be in a good place to just hit Command S on a Mac or Control S periodically throughout creating this grid in order to save my work. And as you are working through the 1 in 20 project, think really critically about what images you place next to each other and where, and what relationships between those images start to develop in this really most basic test of resolution, composition, and image compositing, which is your first project. Once you have all of your images, all 20 images arranged in your grid, and you are ready to make those final adjustments, make sure that you go up to View and you're going to turn off your guides here, just like that. And you're going to make sure that your images next to each other don't have any white space between them. So everything should be lined up right up next to each other. And then once you are ready to, did not mean to do that. Once you are ready to save your 1 in 20 project, you'll come up to File, Save As, go into JPEG for the format. Because you'll be turning in your JPEG, you'll never turn in a PSD to me for this class. You're going to be turning in that JPEG to Canvas as well as Google Drive. And you'll hit Save. Make sure that your quality is set to 12 or maximum on this slider, and you'll hit OK. And that's when your entire grid is ready for critique. So I really hope that this demo helps as far as understanding the basics of compositing layers in Photoshop, managing resolution and image sizing, and I hope each of you are compelled to think really critically about what word you might choose and the 20 associations that you can represent that word with from images. So thank you, and let me know if you have any questions.